the midst of all my cooking videos, I found some fun hobbies to show you too. I'm going to do a little series on making fairy houses and fairy gardens, and I welcome you to get creative and try some of these things too. It's going to be nice and fun. So just a little break from cooking, or actually while we're cooking sometimes, but I don't know, enjoy the whimsical aspect of the fairy villages, and I hope you like these videos too. So I'm going to tap into the talents of some of my friends to join the fun and help to show you how to make some of these cute little fairy gardens. It's just a fun hobby, and I hope you get to try it, because the more you start to put them together, the more creative you get, and you can find things from nature, things that don't even cost anything, to start to put these together. So it's a fun hobby, and I just want to show you a little bit about that. I'm going to have my friend Averie today to show you how to make a fairy garden in a clay pot, and that's the indoor version. And then in a couple days I'm going to have my friend Jamie, which you already know, to help us make some outdoor pots where we're going to use live plants in the gardens. So that'll be fun too. I'm looking forward to that. But for now, I'm going to introduce you to Averie, and she'll get you started.
So now I'm going to show you some of the components we're going to use for our fairy gardens. We have some mosaic glass tiles, and then we have a bunch of different colored beads here that we could use. We have a little fairy we can put in our garden. You can set her anywhere you'd like next to the house. We have some fake moss we can put down if you want to put dirt on the bottom first, or rocks, and then put this over it to build the height of the house. Picked up some flowers that we could cut and place over the fairy garden, and some mushrooms, very light and cute. So I picked up a little fairy garden house that we could use in the fairy garden, and it isn't actually a little night light, so you can turn the light on and it could have it in your living room or when you were first walking in your house, and it'll accent the room and be pretty at nighttime. So Kathy and I got really creative, and we wanted to use a lot of nature and natural stuff in our fairy gardens. So Kathy picked up a nice stick that we can use, and a couple of these sticks to make a ladder with this twine that we have here. So that'll be really cool. We want it to look as natural as possible. You can deck it up a little bit and make it a little bit more glam if you want, but we're going to keep the natural look. And then we have a lot of other cute little details we picked up at Michael's and Hobby Lobby that we can use also. But I'm not going to show you all these now. You're going to have to wait. We even have clay here we can shape into many different things, like babies and snails. Keep in mind the fairy gardens there are a lot of different shapes and sizes you can use, and different themes for our fairy gardens. We have this coffee mug, a teapot, anything you could use to make it creative and pretty. So continue to watch us so you can make fairy gardens too. Hello again. Started working on my fairy garden with my 9-inch pot. What I did was, to make it elevated, I took these bread tins and I glued them down in the pot, and then we traced the bottom of the pot with some cardboard. We glued it down to give it some height, and then I'm going to take my moss and I'm going to flatten it down and shape it how I'd like. I also took my fairy garden house and I traced the bottom, and I cut out 2 circles to elevate the house. I'm going to place my fairy garden house on top of it to give it a different perspective and height, so the moss will be lower than the house. And then we can start placing some rocks to make a path to the door.
Okay, while Averie's working hard on her fairy garden there, I'm going to take the other piece of clay pot and I'm going to turn it upside down and try something different with this one. We're going to make a doorway here so that it looks like part of a bigger fairy garden, and this is going to be where the fairies or gnomes go in and out of the door. So I'm going to use some sculpey clay to make the doorway, but I'm also going to take some tiles and stones and make a very rustic looking little cottage for these fairies. Okay, I'm going to work on that. How's that coming along, girl?
Great.
So now, what did you do in the meantime here?
I glued down all my moths, and then I glued down the elevated part for the house, but I didn't glue down the house because remember it still has that light in there. And now you can see a little bit of the cardboard in front of the house, so I'm just coloring it in to blend it in with the moss.
All right.
So here's my finished product of my fairy garden. I took some of these flowers that I had in the beginning and I cut them up. I glued them alongside the pot to make it look like a flower hedge. And then Kathy had some glass from her rock tumbler, and I wanted to look as natural as possible, so I glued them in to make like a pathway. And then I just stuck my little fairy guy in the corner here. He's just sitting there waiting for some visitors.
Okay.
Here's my finished product.
That turned out cute. That's nice. Okay, just to show you how I'm approaching this little clay house, I'm using Well-Bond glue. I use this for my mosaics and a lot of crafts, and it always holds up really well, even when I put it outside in the weather. So I've used some little small tiles. I have a variety pack here, and I'm using them to shape the door. Now these are already glued on where the glue is dry, and you can see how solid they are. So I'm going to continue to make the shape of a doorway, and then I'm going to continue to build on this using other things. Like I just went out in the driveway here and picked up some different shapes of small rocks, which I want to glue them on next, you know, somewhere in the mix here, to make them fit nice, kind of like a mosaic. And they don't have to be snug up against each other, but we want to have them make something that looks attractive. And then we might go to the next level and do some kind of shiny beads. But after I get a decent amount glued on, I'm going to take some moss and put it into the cracks of the rocks, and that's going to make a nice rustic looking little cabin here. So I'm going to take pine cones and cut off each one of the little pieces of wood here, and I'm going to make shingles out of them across the top of the house. So that's what I'm working on, and I'll show you every once in a while here how it looks. I also have some other interesting things to work with here. This is a bunch of glass that's like little melted glass pieces, and they're going to brighten up different spots of this. I also have some glass pieces that have been rock tumbled, and I think there's a use for them too. I think you kind of get ideas as you go. You don't always start out thinking, oh, I want this thing to look exactly a certain way, but as you go it starts to fall together and you think you know what to do in the next step. It's kind of like when my sister Dawn is making quilts. She says, I let the quilt talk to me, and then she knows how to make her quilting designs flow. And that's kind of how we're going to approach this. We're going to take a few steps and let the piece talk to us. That's how we're going to go down the path to the fairy garden. All right. really doesn't have to take that long. You just slather it up with some glue, and then you can just apply the pieces and hold a little pressure for a while. What's fun about the fairies is you start to imagine what that life would be like, and then that's how you kind of come up with what they could use from findings from nature. And it's really just a fun little craft. All right, now I'm leaving a little space at the bottom of this doorway because when we sit it down into a moss or a yard or a piece of grass, even if it's fake grass, we want to be able to have the grass come up a little bit, not like it would be keeping the door from closing, if you can imagine that. All right, now next piece, now the doorway, we're going to go with some real stones. Found stones like this, you know, they may not have a perfectly flat surface, so just try to make them fit where the flattest part of their surface will touch down on the glue. Today I went to a yard sale and a lady was selling seashells that they collected on the beach when they were in Florida, and I took the box from her because I thought, oh boy, this is a great opportunity to get some beach theme fairy gardens going. In fact, there are many little mermaids that they use in little fairy gardens. And so you can expect to see something from the beach coming up too. Couple seashells, couple starfish, some palm trees, and some mermaids. Take a close look at this one. Now we have a row of heavier stones around this doorway, and there we'll weave the moss in and out of all those cracks so it looks like it's overgrown a little bit. And now we'll go to the next layer. All right, I'm gonna try to hold this still for a little bit until the glue dries, but then I'm going to start working on the roof as well with the pine cones. I started the shingles around the top. While the stones are getting a good setting there, I'm not going to disturb them until they dry, but I cut up the pine cone pieces here, and I'm forming the shingles on the roof here. And they just fit right against each other. We're going to just keep covering around the edge. Okay, now I glued a couple rows of pine cone pieces all around here, and then I added some of this brown glass made from old brown bottles, probably beer bottles that were tumbled. And I'm going to let all that dry now and go on to some other things that we're going to glue on as soon as that's dry. I'm going to let it alone and not disturb it, but I think it's coming out kind of nice. And don't forget, we'll have moss stuck in there and it'll look like it's out in the middle of the woods. Okay, just wanted to show you that part. I'll be back. Okay, let me give you a little update on this project here. I have to do it in steps. It's taking a little bit of time, but I have to let the glue dry in between steps. So what we have so far here, we have glued on the stones for the doorway. We have glued on the tiles that frame the door. And then I added some clear glass, well, tinted brown glass beads down the side here, beads of glass. On the top we have some broken bottle pieces that we're gonna sit one of the fairies on there. This is made from pine cones that we glued separate pieces of pine cone on there. It's all dry. That dried overnight, and we're gonna I put glue on the doorway here, but that was to prepare for a door I made out of Sculpey clay. In the last 5 minutes here, I just formed a little door out of Sculpey clay, and I used an old pen to make the lines in the door. I just baked this for about 10 minutes, so it's still hot, pretty hot, still can be formed. So I'm going to take the glued doorway, and I'm going to quickly lift the door and get it in that spot, because I can still bend it a little bit at this point because it's so nice and hot. And now it's going to stick down to the glue in the shape that curves the little clay pot here. So I think that'll be a nice fit. And at this point I can press on all these lines because they were baked. They're not going anywhere. They're staying right there the way I formed them. So all we have to do now is wait for the glue to dry. I'm going to press this off and on here to make sure the glue dries. We're still waiting for the glue to dry on these beads before I can go to another step. Okay, it's looking good. It's looking good. While everything's going through this stage of waiting to dry, I'm going to take a half a bead. This is one of these glass pieces. I have a green one here that broke in half, or you can break it intentionally, but I'm going to just glue this on as a door handle. I'll show you. Just take the flat part and put it down so it looks like a handle that you could grasp if you're going to open that door. Alright, this white glue dries clear, so it's really nice that way. Alright, now I'm just going to let all that dry before we go on to another step. Alright, now that this is pretty solid, there's still a little drying to take place, but nothing's slipping around. I'm going to use some of this moss. Now there's many different kinds of moss floating around in the craft stores and stuff, but this is one that is not applied to a base. So we just want to pull it apart. I have it outside because it makes a big mess. And get some thin lines of this, and we're going to stuff them in around the stones. So we want the appearance that this is a house that has been out in the woods a long time, and the moss has grown around the features of the house, the stones, the doorway. So I'm just going to work this in around the stones, and then I'm going to squirt a little glue down in the areas where we want it to stick to the pot. When you get these pieces of moss all situated where you think they're going to stay, you put a drop of glue in there, press it all in. They're pretty much going to be like that. If you have some that you want to really expose the rocks, just take a clippers, scissors or something, and clip right down to the top of that rock. Then we'll see all the nice stones, and then all you'll see in between is the moss. And all right, now I'm pretty much satisfied with how the moss has gone into all the cracks, and I glued it. Glue's still drying a little bit. Even did the top here where we had the glass, and there's a reason for that. So let's trim it up, get all the loose stuff off of there. We'll still leave some of the terracotta poking through because the fairies found this pot and they're using it for their house. So I think it came out pretty cute. On the back side, we're leaving uncovered. That's where it has the charm of using a pot. We have a few peeks through of terracotta colored clay underneath. So, okay, we have one more thing to do to finish off our fairy house. And what do you think that is? We have to add a little fairy. We have this little girl here. We're going to put her on the rock that we made on the top of the house. Nice and solid, with a little glue on her. So there's our little fairy house. As I said earlier in the video, I plan to have several videos about fairy gardens with a couple of my friends getting involved, which will make it a lot of fun and interesting for you guys too. Okay. Thanks for watching. Have a very nice day.